Hi, good morning or afternoon or evening, wherever you are, and welcome to the Brooklyn Book Festival virtual edition. My name is Cathy Erway, and I'm very honored to be hosting a panel today, and it's about cooking in these times. So as a cookbook author and podcast host, I actually started my journey in food writing by sharing my adventures in cooking everything I ate at home for 2 years rather than going to restaurants with my blog, Not Eating Out in New York. So exploring the pros and cons of home cooking versus going to restaurants is very familiar terrain to me. However, I don't think that anyone could have been prepared for the tragedies and hardships of these times. So I think it's really, really important to note how seriously COVID-19 2020 has negatively affected so many lives and livelihoods as we battle sickness, loss of income, with entire industries and careers at the brink. So I can't overstate that when we talk about cooking for these times, it comes from a place of tremendous privilege, the privilege to be able to buy food or to have the time to cook it and to think about it, whether with a sense of creativity or practicality. That said, many Americans did find the time and heart to cook, especially during the start of the pandemic when stay-in-place orders kept all but those deemed essential workers at home. Many of us decided to hone our skills at sourdough, which is something that Bryan Ford knows a thing or two about. Many embraced the healthy, versatile, and economic virtues of beans, which Joe Yonan can also speak to a lot. And many of us took the time to really geek out on a certain dish or cuisine and try to master it, which is something that Bill Buford can speak to as well. So I'm really honored to be joined today by a wonderful panel of authors today. So without further ado, I'm honored to be joined by the author of New World Sourdough. It is Artisan Techniques for Creative Homemade Fermented Breads. And he's also the founder of the blog Artisan Bryan, which received the Saveur Blog Award for baking. It's Bryan Ford.
Hi, how are you?
Bryan. Good, how are you?
I'm great. Thank you for the introduction.
Yeah, absolutely. Moving on, we have also on this panel, his latest cookbook is Cool Beans. It's right here. It is the ultimate guide to cooking with the world's most versatile plant-based protein with 125 recipes. His previous books also include Eat Your Vegetables and Serve Yourself. And in his spare time, he's the food and dining editor at the Washington Post. It's Joe Yonan.
Hi, thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much for joining. And finally, his latest book is Dirt, which he can show you the real cover of because I have the fake cover. I have like the advanced, uncorrected, rejected cover or something like that. So Adventures in Lyon as a chef in training, father and sleuth looking for the secret of French cooking. And before that, he wrote a little known culinary memoir called Heat. He has been a staff writer and editor for The New Yorker since 1995. Hi, Bill Buford.
Hi, Cathy. Very nice to be a member of your panel.
Absolutely. So I'm really excited to get started. Since we're talking about cooking in these times, I thought we'd go around and each of you could share a little story about something that you recently cooked that you really liked, or you think is a helpful, tidbit of a cooking tip in there. And anyone can feel free to just jump in and get started.
Okay, I will.
Okay.
Thank you, Joe.
I sensed a pause there. Well, last night I tried a recipe from Yotam Adelengi's new book, Flavor, and it was so fabulous. It's just everything that he's known for, which is injecting surprising touches into sometimes classic recipes. And I'm going to be writing about it soon. It's a za'atar cacio e pepe, So it's basically a fabulous recipe for cacio e pepe, which, as many of you probably know, is the classic Italian pasta with cheese and pepper. And he just has you add a good amount of za'atar to the pepper, butter, cheese combo. And it just adds this little touch of, it's very simple. And it just adds this little touch of herbiness to the cacio e pepe. It's a dish that I was debating when my husband and I were eating it last night, whether I would say that it serves 4 or 6, or maybe 4 to 6, because it's pretty rich. And yet we came very close to finishing it, just the two of us. So, so that's how that went.
Awesome. Love it.
I'll jump in next, if I may. I'm in between two dishes. One was I finished my last summer ratatouille. You could still get the ingredients for that. And that was, for me, that represents kind of the end of the summer harvest with peppers, onions, eggplant, tomatoes, and zucchini with a bit of garlic. And this weekend, I'm finally getting into the orchard harvest. And I'm in fact making apple tarts today, and also playing with quince. I have a whole bag full of these, which are, the aromatic precursor of the apple and the pear. And it's impossible to eat unless you skin it, and it's impossible to skin until you stew it, and it's still not edible unless you add sugar, but it's actually a sort of wonderful, wonderful aromatic ingredient. And that's what I've got my head into right now.
I'm obsessed with quince.
Love it.
Love quince. Yesterday, I was at the market, and I went to the stand, the Green Market in New York City, and I went to the stand that usually has quince about right now. And I saw, oh, there's the quince. And then there was the chef of Contra downtown, and he was buying all of them. And I said, wait, no. And he said, do you have another cake? Yeah, I'm gonna. And so he had like all his minions with him. He's taking away 5 crates of quince. And said, no, leave me some. So I got, a lot of them are split up and ugly, and they're the ones he rejected. And I love quince too.
Lovely. Wonderful. How about you, Bryan?
Well, I'm a baker, right? It's a little bit different. Make a lot of bread, but up here in New York, there are a lot of nice apples happening. So I've been experimenting with not just like apple tarts or pies or turnovers, but like apple bread, like sourdough bread infused with apple juice, or even using, trying to use apple cider vinegar as a complement to it to kind of accelerate and alter the fermentation while using fresh apples as well. So there's a lot. That's kind of, I'm actually in Sullivan Street Bakery right now. We're selling a special bread. It's me and Jim Leahy put our minds together to put, it's like a coconut bread with dates and bananas wrapped in a banana leaf. And it's called pan de palmas. And it's it's bread of what the palm trees give us, like dates and bananas and coconuts. So it's, that's just kind of how I see ingredients and see things when I'm baking.
AKA yum.
Yeah.
Yeah, that sounds
very yum.
Yeah, AKA want.
Yeah, AKA I'll be seeing it in about 45 minutes.
Yeah, they're actually hitting the oven in about 30 minutes, so it'll be freshly baked in about 45
okay.
minutes. Yeah.
Mad that I'm not there.
Yeah.
Quince, apple sourdough, and za'atar cacio e pepe are really, really good answers there. I'm really stoked for this panel now. Awesome. So let's start with you, Bryan. Speaking of your passion for bread making, mixing ingredients from your Honduran heritage with your passion for bread culture from all over has sort of been the signature of some of your most popular recipes.
Mm-hmm.
So how important to you is creating something original and to the satisfaction of home cooking, and how much does how much does creating something original have to be inspired by your culture, or how important is that?
I think originality is what makes, and I apologize because I'm in the bakery. One of the ovens is like going off. You can hear that. I think that originality makes baking fun, and it keeps the baker's mind like kind of turning a little bit. And so, for example, when you make this bread like a pan de palmas or you know, a pan de coco like I've made, you know, or in my book I've got a plantain and quinoa sourdough or a bananas Foster sourdough. It's kind of playing into, yes, my roots and my culture, and always making sure that you know, I'm from New Orleans, right? So bananas Foster sourdough or plantain, and you know, quinoa is an indigenous grain to Latin America. So using that as a complement to a plátano or a plantain, it's a very Latin American situation, you know. So I think it's fun to kind of make people scratch their heads a little bit, because when you think about sourdough, you think about a certain type of bread, and you think that it should taste a certain way or look a certain way. But the sourdough bread that I make, it doesn't look how it's supposed to look. And you know, the flavors are going to be of things that a lot of people aren't familiar with. You know, so I like to make sure that I'm using not just my culture, but you know, my parents are Honduran, so I'm Honduran American, but you know, I was raised in New Orleans, which is kind of like a hub for Hondurans. So there's a lot of like that kind of Honduran and New Orleans. I was kind of raised eating those flavors, and so I love to make original recipes that kind of display that.
Love it. And outside of bread baking, does that factor into just everyday cooking for you as well?
Yeah, you know, my everyday cooking is a bit of a disaster right now. I've been kind of traveling a little bit, you know, safely, of course, but doing pop-ups with bakeries. So naturally, just like kind of eating whatever. Yeah, you know, I can't honestly say right now that it does. It used to, though. I used to cook a lot of red beans and rice and arroz con pollo and like try to make like nice traditional dishes. Now I try to focus on simple, quick things: oatmeal, you know, rice and broccoli and fish for lunch, and like whatever for dinner. I order out a lot too because I'm new to New York. So I mean, how can you not, you know, grab a slice while you're walking and then, you know, order Indian food for dinner? I mean, so no. I mean, the real answer is no. But I do need to do better and kind of get back to my roots and cook a little bit more.
These are challenging times, and
yeah, they are.
Ending times, absolutely. So actually on that subject, Joe, obviously there's been sea shifts in how restaurant culture functions, with some, you know, turning to selling pantry goods or, you know, constructing elaborate outdoor patios right now. But from your vantage point as a food editor, how do you think the pandemic is impacting the culture of home cooking right now? And what, if any, lasting changes do you envision coming out of this, or trends, perhaps?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think the most basic thing that we've seen happen is just an increase in people who are interested in cooking generally. So we've seen a huge increase in audience for fairly basic things. You know, I think I think from the people who maybe woke up one day during the pandemic and realized that they forgot to learn how to cook, and realizing that they need to brush up. They're having to do much more than they ever thought. They're juggling a lot more than they're used to. So just a huge increase in interest in cooking basics. And then of course, people who are more experienced cooking, I think this has eased up a little bit as the pandemic has progressed, but you know, the more experienced people have expressed more desire for recipes that have ingredients that they can easily find in their supermarket. So they don't want to go on multiple trips, you know, when there were a lot of concerns about exposure from shopping. But at the same time, you know, there's certainly been also a bigger interest in people, you know, wanting to dig into project recipes, because there isn't necessarily the same kind of sense that everything had to happen once you got home from work. You know, more of us are certainly working from home, and I don't want anyone to think that I'm saying that that gives us more time for cooking, because I think that that's not necessarily true, depending on if we have children in the house, it can even be more difficult now, but you can start something. You can put something on to rise and then go work for a while and come check on it. You can put a pot of beans on the stove and then go work for an hour and go back and check on them. So I think that's changed the way people are thinking about cooking right now. And then I would say one of the things that I think might last, or I hope might last, is I do think people are paying more attention to food waste right now, out of a sense of frugality, if nothing else. And so I'm hoping that a sense of that stays with people after things get back to normal.
Yeah.
Your remarks remind me of something Dave Chang said at the beginning of the pandemic, which is that the only thing he does now, Dave Chang, the famous
Kombucha.
the only thing he does now is wash dishes. He sort of cleans up.
Yeah.
Dishes get dirty, he cleans up. Dishes get dirty, cleans up. He spends the entire time in the sink.
Yeah.
He's got a family now, and
Constantly.
trying to combine work and cooking at home makes for an uncomfortable smush of duties. And lately I found I'm still putting in several hours at the sink a day. And trying running back and trying to get something done and then not getting anything done, but then finally you have to get something on the table because you got a family and people got to eat. It's a less defined time, which makes it challenging.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, gotta get that moisturizer on your hands.
We're running our dishwasher. Right. I have a dishwasher and I'm really glad I do. And we're running it. There's only 2 of us. And I swear it's every other day. We're running the dishwasher every other day. And of course, there's a sink full of pots and pans every day too. So yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah, we got 2 teenage sons and we're running the dishwasher twice. It's a small dishwasher, but still,
Oof.
Yeah.
That's a lot. Wow. So you're doing a lot of cooking, Bill. And I wanted to ask you, since you've worked and you've cooked at several French fine dining institutions, I should say, when we make dinner for ourselves, there are different considerations than when you're a member of the Brigade de Cuisine, or maybe not. So I'm curious, what do you think are some of the most helpful or applicable lessons that you've learned working on the line when it comes to home cooking?
I'm really, really good at chopping vegetables. Give me an onion, I can kill it.
Nice.
Give me any vegetable, any shape, I can kill it. And in fact, my wife is a much better, healthier cook than I am, and certainly much more reliable, and therefore in charge of school night dinners. Has finally allowed me into the kitchen when she cooks so that I can prepare her vegetables for her, and she'll write out a list. There is a order and a tranquility to how you cook a vegetable that you learn in the French kitchen, where you get everything set up beforehand and you don't really begin using the knife until everything is ready. And so if you're doing an onion, you crisscross it, and you'll do something else and you crisscross it, and then you line it up on your cutting board and just very, very tranquilly just go up and down with your knife. And it seems slow, but it is actually fast. And it results in uniform vegetables, which are uniformly cut vegetables, which if you're making a stew or any dishes, which it's got kind of like a, what's the Italian word? Sofrito. It has got a sofrito element. I don't know, the vegetables release more flavor, they disappear, they're not so conspicuous, they end up being a surprise. It's cutting. I mean, the other lesson is mise en place, and that's akin to the vegetables. And mise en place is just getting everything ready before you start. And I'm about to film a video with my boys making apple tarts today. And I realized, oh yeah, I gotta get this in place, and I gotta get this in place, and it's just thinking ahead. And those are 2. That and cleaning up afterwards. It's just basic kind of kitchen hygiene in a way. But it's there. And I also have the benefit of having worked in a kitchen where it was pretty brutal, and there weren't a lot of hugs. And I have this one guy, Christoph. he's always in my head, where, you know, my cutting board's a mess and suddenly I hear pop, pop. And he's, you know, it's sour, it's, you know, dirty, not clean. And it's really unfortunate to have Christoph pop in my head at, you know, uninvited. But he was a pretty loathsome figure. But it does mean that you approach it with a kind of order. You approach your cooking with order, and that lasts.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Awesome.
I always hear a former culinary school teacher in my head. Every time I scrape out a bowl, if I've got batter or something in a bowl, I hear her, because if we left a teaspoon in there, she would make us do the math. She would say, 1 teaspoon, if you're making 1,000 of these a day, 1 teaspoon times 1,000 is however many cups.
Right.
And you've just lost that restaurant, you know, $20. And yeah.
Love that.
Waste not. Love it. So thank you so much for your answers so far. I think we're going to move on to questions from the audience. So feel free to ask your questions on this, I don't know what you call it, this app. But I'll take a question right now from Kimberly Bizzotti for all of you guys. What is your favorite COVID comfort dish?
COVID comfort dish?
Yeah.
That's a really good one. I've been making not a lot of right now, fried chicken. That's it. I've been using my sourdough discard to make fried chicken, and just kind of use that as part of the egg wash mixture in the batter. And it's been coming out phenomenally. So I definitely had a moment of time during COVID where I was eating too much fried chicken.
Wow.
Yeah.
You're saying you're not cooking that much, and then you're like making fried chicken with sourdough.
Oh, you know, I got to make my recipe.
It's gone on for a while, this COVID thing. I'm in a similar
it's gone on for quite some time.
I did roast chicken and roast chicken and roast chicken until finally my family rose up in rebellion and said, no more chicken. And we haven't had chicken now, wow, since July. But that was definitely the comfort food for a while. Now I think it's probably, you know, it's the age-old comfort food. It's probably pasta. We had a linguine alla vongole last night. You can't have that too much, but it's a great Saturday night treat, and everybody gets excited. And as long as you're not having it that often that it becomes obvious, that's like that was a comfort dinner.
And why is that the age-old comfort food? Is that for you, or you think that it's a...
Well, not linguine alla vongole necessarily, although that's got a nice kind of, that's got a, you know, if you cook it properly, you flavor the noodles with the sea. And there's something transporting, I think, for all of us in that flavor. Certainly for the parents, it takes them to coastal spots in Italy, but also for our boys. It's just a touchstone. But I think pasta's of almost any kind, pasta is the instant comfort food, giving you warmth and starch and immediate gratification and dealing with hunger. And it's a great family mama papa dish. And as always is, I mean, for us, it always is. We don't have pasta that much, but it's always our go-to.
Awesome. Yeah, it's one of mine too.
Yeah, for me, it's probably, for me, it'd have to be tacos, is the COVID comfort food. Of course, that was also the pre-COVID comfort food. So, and it'll probably be the post-COVID comfort food. I love pasta and carbs and noodles of all kinds too. But on any given weeknight when I'm kind of stressed and haven't really thought about what I'm going to make and don't really feel like I have a lot of creativity, you know, I always have tortillas, either that I've made or bought. And I either just, you know, warm them and put often beans, of course, and leftover vegetables and salsa and something crunchy and fresh cilantro and the like in them. Or I'll make tostadas, or you know, I'll fry the tortillas and make tostadas, or sometimes crunchy shell tacos, which are a fun throwback to my West Texas childhood. So. Yeah,
out of the box, like the cardboard box, and the shells that are stacked, like the crunchy.
No, you know, I I mean, I do sometimes do that, but I often don't have them. So I'll just I'll bake them in the oven. Have you done that where you just drape the tortillas over a couple of the oven rack
Oh,
bars?
Wow.
But you like rub them with oil, and you just drape them over and bake them, and they get crispy and hold that shape. If you rub them with enough oil, which I do, it comes close to tasting like they're fried.
Wow. But just
But
put
it's
a
easier.
pan at the bottom, right underneath to catch any drips, right?
I put a pan underneath to catch
Yeah.
the drips. Yeah. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I haven't made tortillas for a long time. That prompts me to make them, and I'm pretty sure I've got to consult with my wife that we're going to be having tacos tonight. No, we're not. Sorry.
Oh, perfect.
Yeah, maybe this week. Maybe that night when she's busy. Maybe Monday night. That's what we're having. You're working Monday night.
Actually, I would like to interject because I read in your introduction, Bryan, you write that your mom would make tortillas and they're always perfect every time. And she never used a recipe. It was always intuition.
Yeah, her tortilla recipe is insane. It's yeah, I mean, I've never seen her use a recipe per se. I mean, it's all, baking it's what is a recipe anyway? I mean, you basically need to get dough to a certain consistency and use some sort of leavening agent to make it rise or not rise, and use some sort of oil and add salt to it. I mean, it's not, I get, now that I'm a little bit more seasoned, I definitely get how she did it. But when I was growing up, I used to just be amazed. I mean, she would just like get a bowl and she would just put everything in it and she would mix it in the bowl, and I would feel like it needed more flour or something, the dough gets sticky. And she's like, no. The key is you actually need a little more oil, a little more canola, vegetable oil. And the way she would knead it is she would put a cutting board into the sink at an angle, and she would take this kind of sticky dough and like slick the cutting board with oil, and she would just knead this thing and it would turn into this smooth ball. I still don't really understand. I don't know how she does it, but I've tried to replicate her recipe. Obviously in my book, I've got a sourdough tortilla recipe, which tortillas are not leavened really, but they do need, her recipe is baking soda or baking powder, both. I don't even know. She always switches it on me. I'll ask her the recipe and sometimes she'll say baking soda, sometimes she'll say baking powder. And I'm just like, well, which one is it? Doesn't it swap on there's some kind of mixture. She's got some kind of concoction that she won't share with me. Anyway, so I make a recipe in my book that's paying homage to that and, respecting the tortilla. The tortilla is just it just needs so much respect. And there's so many different types of tortillas. The ones we make in Honduras are made with coconut milk. And not all of them are, but like my mom's are. They're made with coconut milk. So they have that very distinct aroma and flavor when you eat them with beans and cheese, a baleada. Yeah, I mean, tortillas are a staple of life.
Love it. So wait, your mom took the cutting board like that, and kneaded.
Yep. She did. It's I've never seen anyone else do that still. It's just my mom in the sink always.
Love it. Whatever works.
It's like a washboard.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh man. Okay. I like this question from Ruth Catcher. Has your commitment to seasonal food changed during the pandemic? And if so, are you spending more time preserving as versus cooking?
I'm sure other people can answer this better than I can. I think, so far, we've been lucky in that the COVID arrived just before spring. So if you can get out to a market, and here in New York, the markets were really quite a challenge to get to in the beginning because they were limiting the number of people who could go in. So you'd have to get up really early or wait in a line that went all the way around Union Square. We've been gifted with a lot of seasonal foods. And if anything, there was a crisis for farmers in the beginning because they were supplying restaurants, and suddenly the restaurant business dried up. And so farmers were suddenly really reaching out to customers, and you could get to private customers, you can get boxes, and you just got an abundance of food that we haven't seen before in a long time. And we got out of the city finally. We were up in Maine, where Maine was at its blossomy, sun-blessed best. And been a wonderful time for fresh ingredients. I haven't been preserving anything. I haven't been preserving anything yet. I haven't cooked up tomatoes into a sauce. I have, as a fellow bean lover, been freezing some fresh beans, but that's not really normal conservation. But that's just so that you can, a fresh bean is a wonderful, wonderful thing. And its great efficiency is that you can dry it and you can eat it all year long. And that's a very efficient way of conservation. But since we have freezers, you can also freeze them, and then you have the benefit of eating a fresh bean later. The chef I met yesterday at the market who was buying all the quince, the chef, he was pickling them mainly. So he was getting ready for the winter, and there's no question that we should be getting ready for the winter, because it's all gonna disappear in a month or two.
Yep. Anyone else has your?
I'm lucky to have. Yeah, I'm certainly I'm cooking more out of the garden than I ever have. I mean, I've had a garden for many years, but a couple of years ago, we moved to a house with a bigger yard, and I feel really lucky to be able to have it. And just one of the great things about working from home has been that I've been able to tend to the garden so much more than I normally would. I mean, I just, it's easier to go out in the morning, and without having that commute anymore, I can go out and weed and check on things. So I've certainly, my garden has never been as productive as it was this year. So, but like Bill, I actually am not preserving all that much of it. I'm just eating it as fast as I can. I've got the last tomatoes. I was without a stove for about a month. It just got fixed the other day because everybody's using their appliances so much that they're all breaking. And so I was waiting for my stove to return so that I could handle the last kind of onslaught of tomatoes. And I have a lot of tomatoes. So I'm planning on roasting a bunch into sauce later today, and I might can it depending on how much I get.
Right. I always plan to can a lot, and then I'm eating it in the same week. I'm like, that was pointless. Brian, how about you?
Well, I was waiting for you to ask. No, it's good. I was in Miami for most of this pandemic. I mean, obviously I'm not there anymore. Miami is just such a unique climate. It's basically summer every day. And I lived there for 4 years. So I feel like I just got out of this one summer day. I was just hot, oppressively hot all day. But what grows there, obviously coconut trees, and those are basically in season year round. I mean, there's always coconuts available. You can always chop down, either a young green coconut or an old yellow coconut. And I like to make coconut milk with that. So you can make fresh coconut milk pretty much all year round. You just walk around your neighborhood and there's just coconuts everywhere. You can just take them. And, the older yellow ones, so to make coconut milk, you take the older yellow ones, you take the flesh out of that one, and you take the coconut water out of the young green one, and you'll blend that up in a certain way to where it gets a good consistency. And then you kind of just strain that through a cheesecloth. And that makes a really, really good coconut milk. So that's probably one of the most frequent things that I've done using something that's readily available. Well, not anymore because I'm in New York. I don't see any coconuts, but
I wish.
Yeah.
Awesome. All right. So let's move on to a question from Ann Duddy. What is your most used, beat up, written in, go-to cookbook?
Oh, wow. I'll go for this one. Most used, beaten up, written in cookbook. It's this old little baking book. I don't even know the name. Jeez, I'm sorry. I know what it looks like, and I just I can see it in my hand. It's actually it's not even a bread baking book. It's it's a French book actually. It's called Biblia de Pâtisserie, I think. It's like a kind of a pastry Bible. And I don't even know who wrote this book. Sorry about that. But yeah, it's got all kinds of different, it's completely in French. So it keeps me on my toes. And I'll try to write translations. And so, that's my go-to. Lots of pies and tarts and viennoiserie and stuff like that. It's a good one.
Bill, does that ring a bell to you?
I was thinking, I go through phases. I mean, there have been books. I have any book that was important to me, I have and will go back to it. And I certainly have books that hark back to when I lived in England, and I moved to England in 1977. I'm a lot older than anybody else here. And I was thinking it could be, you know, I kind of fell in love with Elizabeth David at one point, and I've got certainly several books by her that's trash. But for me, it's a fairly recent one, because I was lucky enough when I lived in Lyon, and no restaurant would take me on. I went to cooking school, which I'd never done. And I did a kind of compressed course where I was doing only cooking instruction rather than theory. And I could barely speak French, so it's just as well, which was the Institut Paul Bocuse. So it's like, you know, pretty Mr. Paul Bocuse's place. And there's a text, I happen to have it here, and that's probably typical. There's a textbook, and it is so, I mean, the pictures are so dire, and the presentation is so awful. But and there's nothing. This is like the opposite of food porn. You look at it and you just think, wow, I'm gonna serve this in a cafeteria, or I'm gonna serve it in one of those hotels that's about to go bankrupt. But actually, it is so precise. And you like you, Bryan, it's in French, and it does keep you on your toes. I'm consulting it now for making my apple tarts. Like, does the salt go first or the sugar go first? And what's the thing? But it is the most definitive, authoritative, comprehensive cookbook I've ever come upon, and it is the reference book for French technique. And I use it. I actually I bought a second copy in case something happened and I lost this. And now there's a new edition which just arrived. So now I've got 3 copies. And I think it's coming out in English next month, which is gonna, like, it's a shame because that's gonna blow my game.
Oh.
But it's just a brilliant tome. And I feel comforted having it nearby just because it's like the reference book.
All right. Sounds like a real Bible.
What is the opposite of food porn, do you think?
This.
What is the opposite term for food porn? Food horror, right. Food horror. For me, it's a mix of old and new, I would say, too. I mean, certainly, well, Diana Kennedy, The Cuisines, Plural of Mexico, which I just fell in love with the first time I read it. Just the idea of the plural there made me really happy to acknowledge the vast diversity of Mexican cooking. Certainly Marcella Hazan, Essentials of Italian Cooking, Matter Jaffrey, maybe World Vegetarian, that's pretty page through for me. And then some more recent books. Well, Vegetarian Cooking for Everyone, Deborah Madison. That one has been big for me. And then probably lately the most well-used cookbook is Amy Chaplin's book from last year called Whole Food Cooking Every Day. I love her work. She's an Australian chef and cookbook author. She wrote this beautiful book called At Home in the Whole Food Kitchen. Whole food singular, very important. It's not about the supermarket. And her latest book is Whole Food Cooking Every Day. And she's just got exquisite taste, and the recipes are beautiful.
I'm writing it down. Don't know it. Thank you for the tip.
Sure, ditto. Need that English translation though. My French is horrific.
I'll send you the link.
All right, looks like
Great.
we have got time for one more question. We're going to take this question from Agnes Moxie. When the frenzy of emptying grocery stores started, one of the ingredients left behind was fennel. Americans don't seem to appreciate this fantastic vegetable. I was thinking, how do you relate to fennel, and if you have a favorite way to prepare it?
Oof.
Fennel, the bulb, I'm guessing,
Yeah.
known as finocchio. And
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Favorite
Love
fennel preparation.
Love fennel.
I'll jump in. I love fennel in at least 3 manifestations. One is a very simple raw with lemon and olive oil, and sometimes a little bit of sugar, depending if you want it. You just cut it up very, very thin, and then you toss it. And it's, if you get a, mandolin where you can cut it really, really like paper thin, it's just delightfully fresh. And the others I like to kind of, I like to cook it too, where I'll poach it to soften it, then cut it in half, then brown it on a saute pan, and then reduce it in orange juice with a little bit of butter. So that's a combination of orange and fennel.
Ooh.
And then the other thing I like is fennel pollen, which doesn't seem to last as you cook it that much, except that it smells so beautiful. And I worked in a butcher shop in Italy, and I associate it with pork. And whenever I have pork, I always use fennel pollen, but not just to cook with, but also at the end, like a seasoning, just before you serve it. So you get that blast of kind of like a Italian summer hillside. Fennel is a wonderful ingredient. Wonderful, wonderful.
Digging it. How about fennel for Bryan or Joe?
Does fennel seed count?
Yeah, sure. Let's go.
That's a good one for everything bagel topping. I don't prefer it, but I do know people that do like to put fennel seed in there. I like to use fennel seed on focaccia though. That comes out pretty nice. Just not a lot though, just like kind of right down the middle, just like a nice little brush of fennel seed, and give it a nice pop of flavor with some thyme and some olive oil and some sea salt. But in terms of the fennel plant itself, I probably have actually never cooked with it.
Yeah, but you had palm trees,
Yeah.
I'll take a palm tree over a
and coconuts and right. Yeah, I also would trade you. I'm like Bill. I like it both raw, thinly sliced. It's really great with apple. It's really great in slaws or as a slaw. And with oranges and citrus, it's got that natural marriage like Bill was saying.
Yeah.
Yeah, I also like to braise it and maybe gratin it. That's always really nice. Yeah, I think it's beautiful.
Awesome. I like it with chicken, I have to say. Also roasted some chicken with the fennel on the pan.
Nice. Yeah.
Great. Well, I guess that's about all the time we have today. So thank you. I just want to thank everybody here on this panel. Bill Buford, onward. Can't wait to see your cooking videos, which you mentioned on the New Yorker cooking video.
They're the New Yorker. Yeah, we have a couple in the can, and we're doing one today. So this one I think will, because it's apples and it's seasonal, I think we'll see this one pretty soon.
Awesome. And Joe, thank you so much for being with us. We'll look forward to your next cookbooks.
Sure, happy to. Thank you so much for having me. Thank you, appreciate it.
Absolutely. And Bryan, have fun baking for the rest of the day.
I'm about to run to the oven right now and load up these pan de palmas. It's gonna be great. Thanks for having me.
Wonderful, wonderful.
I believe those can be mailed, right? Those can be mailed, right, Bryan?
Yeah, they can be mailed, but they probably won't.
Bryan, I'll be seeing you as soon as we have a break here. I'll see you in the next, maybe half hour.
Are you really coming?
Yeah.
The bread will be here, but I might not. I might be taking off to get some sleep.
All right. You got an all-nighter?
No, sort of. We can call it that.
Okay. You had a festive weekend.
Yeah, let's just stick with festive weekend.
Great meeting you guys.
Thank you guys.
Thanks everyone at home.
Really a delight.
Yeah, thank you.
See everybody again soon.